This is the AnChain podcast, and today we'll be talking about OpenClaw. Now, you've seen the discussions, fears, announcements, and even new developments like an agentic social media. So, we'll be talking about everything, what it is, and how do you stay safe. Of course, joining me today is our founder and CEO, Victor Fang, and senior investigator, Philip Werlau.
Hi, thanks for having me here.
Hey, Aaron.
So, of course, the first question before we get into the nitty gritty is what exactly is OpenClaw, and why are people talking about it?
So OpenClaw, I mean, they actually changed the name multiple times already within the last few months. It was called ClawBot, and now I think officially called OpenClaw. It's an open source project, and it's for personal AI agent by this one developer from Europe called Peter. Very smart guy. And he put together this very nice UX that everybody can actually download, install, and even if you want, you can change your codes and all that, and you build your own personal AI agent. And then also today, right? We are at the AnChain.AI, we're building AI agent to 5 floor, and I think we can definitely share more about like how we are connecting to OpenClaw to service as like an AML compliance officer or like a crypto investigator, and then all these cool things that we can do on top of OpenClaw.
Yeah, awesome. So, Philip, I have to ask you the follow-up question, which is, could you share a little bit more about maybe some practical applications of OpenClaw? I know you mentioned it's a personal AI assistant or personal AI agent. Could you tell us more about the personal side?
Sure. So OpenClaw is, it's an agent framework. So it allows you to hook into LLMs and make them into full agents, which means giving them tools, giving them workflows. And that workflow is where that kind of personality comes in. So you build it custom to what you want it to be. There's this thing called a soul document where you tell it what its soul is, how it should act, should it be aggressive, should it not? And then you can connect it to your sources. So for example, I have mine connected to a Discord server and it DMs me on Discord. You can connect it to Slack, to Telegram, to basically any method you communicate with. So it's a framework to connect it into, your communication devices and to set it up the way that you like and do the things you want. But it's a playground, right? It's a sandbox. You can build it and use it as you see fit.
Awesome. So, Victor, we have this really awesome graph here with different parts of OpenClaw. Could you explain to us how it works and what are the most important things that people should know?
Happy to. So I think there are at least 5 key components at the OpenClaw framework, right? So one is the start from the middle, the gateway daemon. And that's the way to connect to all these different like CLI or the apps and all that. How do you interface with the agent? And then in the core of this, look at this like operating system, right? So the core of it is called the agent runtime. So basically like it's dealing with different like the agent's reasoning, the memory, and even the plugins, right? And skills and all that. So how the LLM is orchestrating and use all different tools through MCP and skills and all that. The third one is the skills and plugin system. I think they make it very easy to use and bring in your own tools and all that. And that's something that Philip, right, can share more about the how AnChain.AI, the data MCP can integrate into the OpenClaw. And then the interfaces, right, the web UI, the CLI, those how you interface with this operating system and the channels. So it's another cool thing that they enable that basically like you connect to WhatsApp, Telegram, Slack, and all that, right? So you can actually use it as a channel to control your personal AI agent. So those 5 components here, as we illustrated here, the agent runtime, the gateway daemon, the skills and plugin system, the interface, and the channels.
I saw a post on X talking about it as like how this is the nervous system of the agents. So you're connecting an LLM, which is kind of like a brain, to like this framework gives it a nervous system to be able to use different skills and MCPs. Now, before moving further, I think it would be nice to explain a little bit more about skills and MCPs and how do they work on an agentic level. Philip, could you explain a little bit more?
Sure. Skills and MCPs, they're kind of 2 related concepts. MCPs can be thought about as they're basically just a wrapper on an API. It basically just tells an agent how to effectively use an API, how to format messages, what it could expect to return back. And then skills are basically just a set of documents that teach it how to do things, how to use tools effectively, how should it address problems and things like that. And so when you bring these 2 together with that brain, you enable really, really powerful things. And so for us, we're building them out for blockchain investigations and analytics.
So talking a little bit more about those powerful things, I think there are two things that are very, very important to tackle, which is the industry effect and the personal effect of these types of frameworks, OpenClaw specifically. Victor, could you give us a little bit more about how this affects the industry as a whole?
Yeah, actually a great question. I think it's a very timely question. So if you're following OpenClaw closely, right, there's a project called MoBot. Basically, it's a social network that is designed for the AI agent to communicate, right? And I think it's close to like more than 1 million agents now are on MoBot right now. And there's a lot of security issues and privacy issues. Like, for example, there's a San Francisco man, his entire like credit card and social security numbers being leaked by his own personal bot and exposed on the Mobook, right? And I'm sure there's tons of other leaking on that platform. So that's a wake up call, right? A lot of people did not know that, wow, so your personal data is super critical, and if you hand it over to an AI that without any guardrails, you may get into like big troubles like that, right? I think leaking your personal data is just one of the many things that could happen. So, and as a cybersecurity and AML compliance company at AnChain.AI, so we really understand like the critical piece of building an AI agent systems and all that data privacy, data governance, even the model governance side of it, right? That's like a whole set of guardrails that you need to put in place so you don't have unexpected results happening, like leaking your data. And again, that's only his personal data. What if, like, think about it. I'm sure like that this OpenClaw project, like, is more for personal, as what they say is your personal AI agent. But let's say if they're companies, I think sooner or later there will be companies, business start to use that because it's super easy to use. And what if they hook up their customer data, the sensitive data, right, the employee data into that, and then with more books and all the different portals that could pull out the data from your private environment, that could be a big disaster, right? Yeah, so I think the security and compliance is super critical, and I think the OpenClaw is just the tip of the iceberg in the agentic AI era.
Thank you so much for that, Victor. Now, you talked about industry level vulnerabilities. You talked about clients. You talked about databases. Philip, could you talk about maybe the personal side of this, like for personal users, people that are just using it for a companion or like having a personal agent?
Sure. So how can people use it? I mean, people are being very creative with how they're using it in their personal life. Everything from checking their emails regularly and updating them. I think that's an important thing to see on this. An important component of the OpenClaw system is something called a heartbeat, where it runs regularly and runs tasks. And so people have it things like checking their email or doing research and checking the news for them and summarizing it. But you can get crazy with it. People have it building apps, going out on the internet, and Victor brought up multiple, making posts. So you can really do anything you want with it. We're using it or experimenting using it for doing things like blockchain investigations, taking in news feeds and investigating them using our tools, right? And our tools are a part of what we talked about, MCPs and skills. And that's a critical component of OpenClaw is skills. There are libraries of skills, repositories of skills, just like there would be libraries for programming languages. And this is a big place where a lot of these security vulnerabilities are coming in. People are poisoning skills. It's a skill that basically convinces the agent to do something malicious, install a backdoor, leak secrets. There's a lot of conversation going on out there about malicious skills, and that's just one of the many security vulnerabilities that exist in agents. So, they're interesting, but proceed with caution when giving them access to, sensitive data, and especially until a lot of these security kinks get worked out.
So the next question I have, can we look at the image and pinpoint where exactly are certain vulnerabilities and what should people watch out for?
Sure. I mean, I think we already identified skills. So right there in the center, data, MCP, and skills. I mean, our skills are secure. You can review them yourself and see what they're doing. But I think the danger comes in either letting your agent install skills without your overview, or you installing skills without actually rating them yourself. So that's one of the biggest places. But any of these places can be. For example, the channels, Discord, Slack, Signal. If you use it as a DM and connect it into an account that you trust, that could be secure. if you connect it into a public channel or a public server and let others communicate with it, you're opening up another attack surface that has already been shown. There's a couple of examples already of people giving access to their friends, to their Claude bot, and their friends convincing it to order them pizza or do some other stuff. Some of these might be jokes, but the risk is real.
The term we use in cybersecurity is called attack surface. Basically, every component you are seeing there, as long as it interact with other components, that's expose itself to the external world, right? That's the attack surface. That means there's a threat vector can come in the cybersecurity terms. And remember, why is it called the OpenClaw is set up in a way that give you root access to everything. That's why I have two systems set up, and one is running in here. So, and a lot of people are using Mac Mini and like that, right? And then we also have a very detailed tutorial that for the serious user, you can set this up in EC2. So with that setting, I think it's one step forward to the actual, you'll be able to leverage the AWS security monitoring, the audit logs and all of that, right? I would never do this to install that on my personal laptop because I get everything on my personal laptop and I may not hook it up to my actual work email, for example, right? So there's a lot of sensitive data that what if somehow the LLM, like I said, they have root access, admin access to all this different data. I want to make sure that they only access the data that I want it to get the job done, right? And I think right now, what you asked about what people are using that for, I'm actually using it through my phone to the Telegram to ask it to investigate the cryptocurrencies and ask about news. And later on, Philip can show you the MCP what we have, right? We can actually build your own AML Compliance Officer and all that. You can read news, you can investigate, you can answer, you can ask questions about regulations in EU or Genius Acts and everything. So I think that's actually comes in quite handy, and I think that's the direction that the enterprise adoption is going. But anyway, so I think OpenClaw gives us very reference architecture about where the agentic AI framework could be.
So here we are in the actual AnChain.AI data API. Now, it's quite interesting because this skill was developed for the industry in general, but it's such a perfect fit for OpenClaw. Philip, could you explain a little bit more about what this does and how it can relate to OpenClaw?
Sure. So what you're seeing here is the data API. This is what the MCP is built on top of, which shows our connection to our data and tools for analyzing blockchain activity and investigating. So basically two different categories. One is information or data. This is things like threat intelligence, label data, categorization. So you give us an address and we tell you who are they? Are they a risky person or address to transact with? More information, are they an exchange? Are they someone who is involved in ransomware, for example? So that's the threat intelligence side. Related, we get things like sanctions data, really important for a lot of AML, anti-money laundering use cases. And then the other kind of bucket is more tools. So this is things like connecting into our auto trace feature. You give us an address and we can trace assets multiple hops forwards or backwards, a really powerful tool for doing blockchain investigations. You can do things like transaction details, go deep into what's going on some of these complicated blockchain transactions and extract kind of insights into that. So it's a package of tools and data that really enable the deep blockchain investigations and analytics that we're looking for.
Can we talk about the APIs one by one?
Sure. So the intelligence API is mainly around data, things like address labels, address risk scores, suspicious activity. So this is intelligence gathering, understanding who is an address. Are they risky? Are they an exchange? Are they a bad actor? You also get information like transaction details. So you can give us an address and we'll extract the information from that transaction. Analytics, on the other hand, is things like our transaction flow, transaction graph, and auto trace. So this is actually looking at where assets are going after the fact. It's also analyzing different addresses based on their activity. So you're not just asking who is this person, but what have they done? How much money have we seen transit this address? How much is currently in there now? Sanctions, again, similar to what we see in intelligence, but it's much more specific to sanctions, right? US and global sanctions from the US, the EU, Canada. Again, this is very primarily for AML, anti-money anti-money laundering reasons. And then the last one is insights. So this is us curating intelligence about industry news, right? So aggregating what's going on in the world in the blockchain space so you can actually act on current events. And that's kind of the 4 buckets that we put our API into.
Philip, thank you so much for explaining what exactly is the MCP. Victor, can we ask you to explain a little bit more about how you can use it or what's it for?
Oh, I love that question. Actually, this is some internal dog fooding, what we said, right? But definitely I can give you some example to just as an inspiration. I'm sure smart engineers out there can build a lot more use cases. Let me give you how exactly we're using it internally, right? So first of all, the 4 categories. The first one, the intelligence. Basically, a lot of the crypto payment companies, they are using that for the risk to checking it's called a pre-transaction screening. Before you even send the money out, right? You need to actually check. You can actually call an API. It will return in real time. Is that good to go, right? Is that falling to will give you the 0 to 100 risk score? If it's beyond 80, you just better just block that transaction. So this is the address, risk score, or the label. And the second category, if you scroll down a little bit, like analytics, those are, I would say, is more a real bit about involving CPU. It's more CPU bound. Kind of you need some computation. For example, the auto trace is like Philip and the team's favorite, and a lot of law enforcement love that capability. Also, is basically other than manually going through all this crypto tracing, you can actually call it one API call and you give all the different parameters. You're going to trace upstream, downstream, or how many hops, or these different criteria that will automatically trace that entire money flow for you. And then you give a breakdown of, hey, how many hops it go to some exchanges and all that. And that could actually enable a lot of the crypto investigation and recovery companies to kind of find out where the illicit funding end up at. And then they can file the subpoenas and all these different law enforcement or legal action. And you scroll down a little bit, the sanction API side of it, right? So, and actually we have full integration into all this global sanction database, right? The US OFAC, this is like an agency under the Department of Treasury. US government is keeping it updated of who is being sanctioned and which company and all that. So that's related to KYC and KYB, know your customer and know your business. So and also we connect to global databases, right? Like the entire financial world that are critical for the AML and CFT compliance. And you know what? One fun fact I always remind our team is in all these sanction database we have, actually less than 2% are crypto related, and we do have all the data. So basically, you can check a person's name if it's in the database. Of course, you can search by cryptocurrency. We find out all the reference, the relevant sanction entities and all that. But another use case is actually people start to integrate our sanction API into the KYC system. So checking the name or even different business, company names and all the different use cases. And the insights, the last one, but not least, right? The news. That's the one that I actually hook up to my Telegram bot. So now every day I actually text my bot, my OpenClaw bot, hey, what's new? Some of the news are related to the threat, like hacking and all that. I can even ask it, hey, then grab all these crypto addresses and start doing those investigations for me. And this whole thing, right? Remember the AnChain.AI system is actually designed to conduct those tasks autonomously. So, and I think we're beginning to see that automation is happening. And I think right now I'm seeing is probably 50-50. Sometimes you still have to be very careful about the hallucination. We have some technique on the prompt engineering or even using our high quality RAG database to make sure that the large language model is moving to the direction you want other than hallucinating. And that's a totally different topic. We can spend another few hours talking about that. I'm definitely seeing the automation is happening through all this by just integrating in these 4 different API categories and MCP server into LLM. You can already do a lot of use cases.
Thank you so much for sharing. That was really, really interesting, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people out there with maybe that creativity in mind can think of different use cases as well. It's such a flexible tool. But before we talk about its integration with OpenClaw, I would love to know a little bit more about AnChain and how it has prepared for this upcoming economy of sorts. Because with the rise of agents, and you mentioned bulk book, there will be a rise in transactions as well. So the next question I want to ask you is more about your view on the evolution of the agentic economy.
Okay, that's a great question. And then overall, we've been building AI in the past, 7 years, right, to fight fraud. We will start with cryptocurrency, but as you can see, we already expand to some of the more broader financial crimes and all that. So as a technologist, I look at all these problems and break it down into a system, right? So there's 3 key components when you come to this entire workflow, right? So the investigation, and then there's a intelligence and the reporting. Intelligence meaning I give you an address. Can you tell me right away who is behind it? Is it safe to make a transaction? That's our real-time capability of those API that Philip just showed, right? The risk scoring and all that. We have an entire machine learning system crunching 70 million transactions every day to put a label on each of the blockchains addresses and even like sanctioned entities and all that. And when you move down to the workflow, right? The investigation. So let's say you are a payment company and you hit this address that actually it is being flagged as a high risk by the AnChain system. So now you're moving to the next step in the workflow, which is you have to investigate. What does investigate mean? It means you contextualize. You understand where the money coming from and where they're going to. Is there any action you need to take? Okay, that's investigation. And sometimes Philip can drill deeper into that. We are involving a lot of DeFi hacking and exploit, pig butchering, you name it. And a lot of them, like when they touch like cross-chain bridges or like privacy protocols and all that, it can be a very daunting task. Okay, and hopefully now with AnChain.AI, we can remove a lot of frictions and we can automate a lot of those tedious steps that Philip and the team have to like manually like spend months crunching that. Maybe we can shorten those into days, if not hours. And then the last step is actually the reporting, right? So a reporting meaning if you ended up like tracing the crypto as the currency, the money into like a liquidation point, could be a VSP, could be a DeFi, could be anything, could be any like entity that you can map. So there probably some legal action need to be taken and all that, right? For example, if you're in the US, you have to file like the SAR report, or if you're doing the payment, you have to file the CTR. And again, that's a very tedious job if you ever worked in the AML team in the financial industry, right? Like the banks or payment processing companies and even like crypto exchanges and all that. So can we automate a lot of those reporting, the tedious work? And the answer is yes. Those 3 components, we successfully integrate AI agent to that. And what we are internal benchmarking was showing like 6x improvement. So it's remarkable that we're seeing like how the human has been enabled by all these automated tools. But I want to make one point clear that also in our vision, human is still in the center of all this, and for different reasons. One is the LLM still have a lot of limitations, right? It hallucinate a lot if you're not careful, and also like some of the regulations, like FinCEN and all these the government agencies, they actually don't allow you to automatically file the report. Your AI cannot file a report to them, at least for now. Things may change, but I can see there's still some technical barrier in there, like the LLM has some limitations, but I think hopefully soon a lot of those will be removed. Yeah, but we focus on the current servicing our current customers in the payments and the VSP industry, and including the government, the regulators and law enforcement and all that. And we're seeing the industry definitely is moving to the more agentic AI direction.
Philip, could you tell us a little bit more about the risks and dangers from a cybersecurity point of view with regards to this agentic economy and the agentic landscape?
Yeah, I think we're already kind of touched on a little bit with the security risk with OpenClaw, which is that there's new attack surfaces that are showing up, right? Attack surfaces have always existed. As Victor mentioned, every link in a chain is a potential attack surface. It's just about degrees. I think the new ones that are opening up now are things like autonomous systems. What kind of guardrails? We've heard horror stories of, Claude deleted my production database because I gave it too much and it didn't realize what it's doing. Prompt injections. When you let it out into the world, people feed it data that get it to incorporate it like commands. So we've already seen someone who had their wallet drained because an agent was convinced into sending it to someone it wasn't supposed to. So these are things that we're starting to see. People are starting to work on solutions with agents. Don't give them secrets, lock them behind, enclaves. And we already see that in the crypto world with multi-sigs or, key management systems. Human beings aren't great. They get scammed out of their keys all the time as well. It's, it's going to transfer to agents. But there's also unique things that are transferring over to agents on how to protect against prompt injection, or things like in the agent economy, especially in crypto, you have things like X402, a really interesting protocol for allowing agents to pay for services natively, and a really interesting protocol called ERC 8004 for agents to register and build trust. So there's already a bunch of really interesting applications that are trying to address the new security vulnerabilities.
Can we dive a little bit deeper into the X402 and 8004?
Well, I still need to look more into ERC 8004. But X402 is really interesting. It's a reusing of an old kind of abandoned HTTP codes. We've all heard like 404, file not found, but that's just one of the class of different response codes you can get back. X401, a 401 code was a code for payment required. They expected in the early internet to have payment required. They kind of just never used it. Crypto guys found it and said, hey, this is perfect for the agent economy. So they reused it. And basically what it is, it's a protocol for sites. When an agent navigates to a site and needs payment, instead of right now where, if you want to give an agent an API keys, you got to go there, you got to sign up with an account, you got to get an API key, then you got to register it. It's a big pain. It's not a good workflow for agents. So what happens here is you give an agent a wallet, you give it some money, and when it goes to an X402 page, it's basically a pay per usage type deal. So it tells it, hey, I need, a fraction of a cent for you to make this request. It pays that fraction of a cent. It all negotiates it through this protocol. So it's basically a way for agents to pay for stuff natively.
For those that want to learn a little bit more about X402, AnChain has a whole blog about it, so you can check it out on their website. Of course, there's other awesome resources there as well. Now we'll try to understand a little bit more about how exactly does AnChain work with OpenClaw and what advantages it might have in terms of upgrading the security and what features it might bring. So Victor, could you explain a little bit more about AnChain specifically and OpenClaw?
I'm happy to. So basically, a lot of the customer we service is doing the business. We are the more like B2B and B2G kind of business. So I think security and compliance is super critical. And then OpenClaw is, I would say, is still experimental, right? I've been thinking very hard, like how do you harden this system? Because it is a very elegant and great framework, and is open source. So I think one is like the deployment side of it. I really, really recommend you do not install on your personal laptop where your private data is. It's just maybe a year from now, maybe the things may change, but you need to be extremely careful what you give this little agent access to. But when I set it up, it's basically I'm giving it root access to my OS. So assume that it can even access to your .ssh, which is all your private keys sit. So be very careful with that. So I would say the first thing we can help is actually we can help you like on the security audit, for example, when you try to build this, like even for your personal project or whatever, or like business side of it, we can help you identify where is the attack surface and how do you harden that, right? So for example, that blog we publish is like we install in EC2. We have a very step-by-step tutorial to kind of guide you through installing the EC2. I think cloud should be the place to live that OpenClaw for business live. Okay. For many reasons, for security, for availabilities, and all that. And the other one that we contribute or we embrace is OpenClaw. Is basically we're adding more functions into it to actually do some business tasks. Like for example, anti-money laundering workflow. I think that's one of the main examples we can do. But I've been searching in the States. I have not found any business use case. There's a lot of very cool personal use cases and all that. But I think the one we developed was a real business problem. Is like crypto AML is a very essential problem, or like even like the crypto payment screening. If you follow the tutorial we have, by integrating the data MCP and the skills that Philip just mentioned. By the way, we open source that also, and it's free to start, right? You don't have to pay anything to start this whole thing. Even the EC2, I think that the node that we recommended, it's the M7i, that's like free to start also, right? So the only thing you probably need to pay is probably the OpenAI key, but that's really cheap, like cents per API call. The infrastructure side of deployment, we can definitely help. And then with the second one is like the MCP server, the AnChain.AI skill set for a business use case. And I think if you really get into the blocks and all that, I think you can definitely learn a very cool skill to build your own OpenClaw to solve a business use case.
Could you just talk a little bit more about where specifically they run in this diagram?
Yeah, so it's actually in the middle, the center of this image. So that's where the AnChain.AI data MCP right there in the middle. And sitting in is a plugin system inside the agent runtime. And then you will using WebSocket to talk to our agent that deploy there, right? AnChain is running our own API and all these different agents. Like even like MCP have 3 different kind of MCP. You can do remote MCP into our streaming server in our AnChain.AI cloud, right? So, and you're right on the way that is connecting on the right of this. That agent is how you access from OpenClaw to our the AnChain.AI infra. And they make it very easy. When I hook this up, I don't even realize it's like there's no hassle connecting to it. It was surprisingly easy.
So we've talked about OpenClaw, we've talked about AnChain's MCP. Now, can we talk a little bit about what this means for the future with frameworks like OpenClaw and how AnChain could support?
Things like OpenClaw, listen, they're not doing anything revolutionary. They're kind of just sticking channels and some basic, but it's an evolving space so quickly. So this is the first we're seeing of a true agentic framework. But all the security things that we saw now tells me that you need to be very careful about deploying in a production enterprise environment. Personal projects, home, that's fine. Getting them into production is a big thing because there's a lot of moving pieces. So I think to Victor's point, that's where we come in. We have a lot of experience with these systems. We've been an AI company since before ChatGPT was launched, right? We're pre-Transformer AI company. And so we have a lot of experience in not just the blockchain space, which we do, how to effectively use AI to get things done. I think that's kind of the high level.
We talked about OpenClaw and AnChain, and of course, everything is so exciting. But once again, we said many times that this is a new technology. Now, Victor, I want to ask you a little bit more about where you think this is headed and how AnChain is positioned to support this type of technology moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the Silicon Valley is saying that this year is actually the year of agentic AI. I think OpenClaw already showed you a very real examples how it could help, right? And starting from the personal agentic AI side of it. But I think what the industry is heading to is definitely more business will be embracing. And then that's something we're being seen in the anti-money laundering workflow, but I think there's actually a much broader application that the business can be activated. For example, maybe digital marketing, or like I spoke to a friend last night during the Super Bowl. He was talking that rebate processing using in the CRM systems and all that. Those could be done by the AI agent very easily, right? And I think the advantage of what the AnChain AI team has is really we came out from a cybersecurity industry, so we know how to harden all these systems, right? We understand how to analyze the attack surface, right? What's the compliance requirements out there, and we have built AI solutions for like big and small enterprise, and including the government. So if you have any questions, reach out to us, and we can, probably advise you how to embrace this agentic AI in the business setting. It's definitely the future of where the world is moving to.
Victor, Philip, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Yuden.